Hi, this is Jacob Wolf with ESPN Esports, and I am joined by Jerome Coupez, the CEO of Prodigy Agency, one of the biggest European agencies in all of esports, famous for representing players in Counter-Strike Global Offensive and more recently Valorant. Jerome, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine, thank you. I'm glad to be there. Thank you for the invitation. And how are you?
I'm doing well. I got to start with something very important, something we're talking on our Valorant show, and also something that's been the talk a lot this week. So you all signed Nitr0 as a to represent him. Obviously, the news is out there. He told me earlier this week in an interview that he is moving to Valorant. He is obviously one of the hottest free agents, I think, for many people in Valorant. A lot of people are interested in him. What was that like getting, or what has that like been so far working with him and trying to find him a home in Valorant?
I think that Nitr0 is, let's say, one of the best CSGO players in NA. He has a legacy on CSGO, so I would say it's not that complicated to find a new home for Nitr0. No matter it is CSGO, Valorant, right? Especially with his leadership capacity. He can be the in-game leader on both games. So I think the traction is really great, and I'm confident that, we will find and announce a new home pretty soon. A pretty exciting project, I might say.
Awesome. We look forward to hearing about it. So a lot of your your agency, Prodigy, has become really known the past few months because you've had a lot of the players you represent play together in tournaments under that name, Prodigy, using your branding. And many of them have actually gone on to sign with very large teams, Mixwell and Scream, obviously ending up at Team Liquid and also at G2. And then others, I believe you represent artists, correct? Also in that mix. What has it been like sort of being at the very front of the Valorant scene as it's in its, it's a toddler at this point, or if that is, it's a newborn, the scene. What has it been like working with a lot of these players and sort of all the different organizations looking to come into the space and finding the right homes for these guys?
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the game, it was really new game, but I was expecting the game to be very similar to CSGO. Right, and as we are probably the leader or one of the leaders on CSGO, I had a pretty good understanding of what is needed on the game at the beginning. So that's also why I had Prodigy mix rosters, mixing some of our players together, scouting new players, and so on. And then, I would say that in Europe, the organization are moving a little bit slowly than in the US, right? But yeah, according to the hard work that we have done since the beginning to understand the game, how it's played, the meta, what the players needs to be pretty good players on the game. Then we started to work with some organization, obviously, firstly with some of our biggest players like Screen and Mixwell, because they were super sound CSGO. Then they were, since the beginning, really, really good on the game. They had some kind of advantage. And we started to build some rosters, having some ideas on how to build roster. And I assume that the fact that we had some successful results with Prodigy as a full mix, just trying to have the best roster possible, depending on the roles and the chemistry, it helped also some organization to consider doing the same, right? Trying to build a roster that makes sense, not only aligning 5 players that have the best stats on the server. But yeah, and then the organization right now, I think that we have been pretty involved with most of them, building rosters, advising organization on which players are the best fit for what they are looking to achieve and how they should assemble a roster. We have some guidance for them. And obviously we sign a lot of players, so I'm really happy about that. But yeah.
You mentioned this, but why do you think that European teams, organizations, have been slower to get into the space than some of the American ones?
Yeah, at least that's my opinion, but I think that there are several reasons on that. The first one is that I think it has always been the case. European organizations are already a bit more cautious than in the US to invest into a new game. And also, I think that the main reason is that we had a lot of stacks in Europe. Let's say French teams like started from CS, EPP, Swedish team like Fabriken and so on. But the difference with the North American market is that an organization, let's say from France or Sweden, let's take Sweden, let's take a Swedish organization. It's really hard for them to pick a full French roster, right? Because of the market, because of the audience, because of the sponsors, because of the talent pool. Like if you have a full stack roster of French players, then you know that in the future, if you want to replace a player, then you will have to pick a French player. You will probably have to pick a French coach, a French manager. And then that's really complicated for the future, for the long term. Most of those organizations right now, they are looking at Valorant for the long term, right? So it's easier in the US because you have only US players, Canadian players, they all speak the same language. So you can pick a roster that is successful. It will be efficient for the organization, right? While, let's say, I don't know, Party Parrots, they were probably one of the best team at the moment, but it's really hard for a European organization to pick a full CIS roster for many reasons. Like they don't have that much audience, they don't speak English, some of them, so it's really hard. So I think that's the main challenges right now for the organizations. Yeah, that's mainly that, I would say. That's why they are looking to build rosters mainly. So they can have everything they need, like English communication, they can pick their own manager, own coach, then they can also have players from different countries for the market, for the sponsors. That is one of the main reasons, I would say.
So what is that process like? You mentioned that you've advised a few teams, and it's easy to place people, like you said, it's easy to place people like Mixwell and Scream and artists who are both popular and also very talented. You know, like they make highlight plays. You notice their skill. They stream a lot. You know, it's very apparent that they're stars early in the game. But not all of your clients are like that. Not all of them are these like high profile superstars, but they're just very talented players with maybe less of a profile on social media or whatever else it may be. What is it like trying to place those guys that maybe not are as popular?
I mean, we have made a pretty good selection on the players, I would say, since the beginning of the meta. I've been playing myself to scout the players and so on. So I really picked the players that I truly thought that they were, they had the material to be on top teams. So it was not, I would say, not that complicated because they had the talent for that. Yeah, after that, that's just the work of an agent, an agency to discuss with teams and explain why this player is the best at this position and for this team and so on, I would say. But yeah, all our players, they have the talent to be there. It's not some magic, right? They are really, really good at the game. They were good on CSGO for most of them. They understand the game pretty well. So yeah.
You know, we have seen a few big organizations enter EU in particular. G2 Esports, Team Liquid, Ninjas in Pajamas, Fun Plus Phoenix recently also signing the mix of the Party Parrots players for plus a few others. Do you think we're going to see more soon, or do you think that it's going to take a long time for European organizations to really be sold?
I think that right now most of the organizations are waiting to see how the game is growing, how the scene will develop itself. I would say they are waiting for Riot's plan, even if they are normally aware about the plan. But yeah, I would say that depending on the players that can potentially switch to Valorant, like some superstar player from CSGO, then it should accelerate some organization that will say, okay, we need this player and we need to build around him. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure that we will see other massive organization in the next few weeks. But I'm confident that we will see a lot of this organization jumping into Valorant by the end of the year, or maybe a little bit before, or 2021. What I know is that they are all scouting the market. They are all interested by the market. They are all studying the revenue streams, what is doable, and so on. So it's just a question of time now.
And opportunity. Of course. What's made Nitr0 really interesting, I think, for many people is he is the first Counter-Strike player who less than a year ago was one of the best. You know, Team Liquid was the best team in the world last July. And won ESL 1 Cologne and won the Grand Slam and everything. And now he's making that switch a year later. Not many of the other players in Valorant have been that successful, or at least haven't been that successful recently. People like Mixwell and Scream obviously had good careers in Counter-Strike, but their peaks, I guess, were some time ago, a few years ago. Do you think that we're going to see, knowing what you know about Counter-Strike players in Europe, do you think we'll see any of the players, top players in European Counter-Strike make the jump to Valorant in the near future?
I think we might see a few really big names coming, but I don't think that we will see some of the very best players right now, like playing top 5, top 10 teams doing the switch. I would say that they will stay on CSGO, but yeah, I know for a fact that we will see some really big names coming to Valorant very soon. But yeah, not the active rosters in top 5, top 10 teams, right? But some very big players.
We'll end on this because I'm really curious about this also. COVID-19 has changed a lot of things in esports. Talking to Nitro, he obviously said part of the reason that he walked away from Counter-Strike is because the routine was a little repetitive, playing against all the North American teams all the time, every single week, from his home in Louisiana. And it's affected tournaments too, and play-ins and everyone else. I think we would have had our first Valorant offline event if not for COVID-19 by now. Probably, maybe even an international event with North American and European teams playing one another. How do you think it will, or how do you think it's affected the Valorant scene? And what do you expect the Valorant scene to look like after COVID-19 has calmed down and the world can get back to sort of traveling and everything else?
I'm not 100% sure that we would have already had a big LAN on Valorant, even without the COVID. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that the tournament organizer will have taken the opportunity to organize a really big LAN as soon as that. But it will happen. And I think, personally, I think it should happen. I hope by the end of the year, Q4, that will be really great. And I can't wait to have an event with all the regions. Obviously, I think that everyone is expecting that. In my opinion, coming from CS, I mean, there is nothing like playing on a big stage in front of a crowd and so on. This is where you can see the true potential of the players. What I see right now in Valorant, especially in Europe, because in the US, in NA, you have a lot of successful CS players, or at least tier 1, tier 2 players that have been playing in LAN. But if you take the European market, except a few players, you have a lot of players that don't have really that much experience in LAN, right? So all those players, I'm really excited to see them playing in LAN because that's a totally different environment, right? You have so much pressure when you're on stage, and it will be the first time for most of those players. Then you expect players like Mixwell and Script to step up for the team and teach the young boys how to handle the pressure and so on. And I think it will be a total different game, to be honest, at least at the beginning, because I would say that 80% of those players, they have never played on big stage. And so it will be totally new for them. And I'm really excited about that. We could see a lot of differences on how they play the game, because we know that on CSGO, when you play online, you try some risky moves that you will never try online, right? And I think on Valorant, when you play Jet, for example, if you play online and you don't really want to take the same risk as online, then you can basically break everything within the team. If everything is based on your dash at the right moment, and then online you are just a little bit too scared to do that move because you don't want to die, then it will change everything, the balance of the team. So I'm really curious to see how it will be in LAN. It should be really interesting.
Jerome, we thank you very much for joining us. That is all my questions for the time being. And for more Valorant and Counter-Strike content, you can find us here on ESPN Esports at youtube.com/ESPN Esports.